The UFC has had its fair share of drama over the years, but sometimes things escalate to a whole other level. Let's look at some of the biggest UFC controversies of all time. Starting with the unforgettable Conor McGregor bus attack. 6 months before the infamous UFC 229 scene involving Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, their feud had already reached its peak. But let me tell you, no one knew things were going to be this bad. Nurmagomedov was set to fight Max Holloway for the vacant lightweight title at UFC 223 in Brooklyn, New York. But things quickly escalated prior to the event when the Eagle, some of his teammates decided to confront Artem Lobov about comments made regarding a potential fight between the two. Lobov was a training partner of McGregor's who was also booked on the card. Let's just say the events that followed left everyone shook. McGregor and a number of his teammates flew out to Brooklyn, where they made their way over the Barclays Arena and attacked the bus carrying Nurmagomedov and numerous other UFC fighters who were scheduled on the card. The level of aggression was so extreme that Al La Quinta, who was on the bus, compared it to a terrorist attack. It only got worse when McGregor threw a metal dolly at the bus, smashing one of its windows. Michael Chiesa and Ray Borg were both taken out of their respective fights because of injuries from the broken window. As for McGregor, he was charged with 3 counts of assault and 1 count of criminal mischief, before pleading a no consent and being sentenced to 5 days of community service. But all that seems like an isolated incident if you look at what happened next. UFC 279's last-minute changes riot. The chaos that ensued at UFC 279 was unlike anything the promotion had ever seen before. In September 2022, the event's headliner, Hamza Chimaev vs. Nate Diaz, was already controversial, since Dana White and the company intended to see Diaz packing with a nasty defeat. At the pre-fight press conference, there was a major fight between Chimaev and Kevin Holland, and things got really ugly really fast. And I'll admit that it was a little hard to watch. White was forced to scrap the entire press conference in response. Things only got weirder when Boers weighed in at 178.5 pounds, way over the welterweight limit, leading Diaz to back out of the fight. This prompted an unusual move from the UFC. 3 fights were changed on one day's notice to make up for the last-minute switch. Everyone was pissed. Diaz ended up facing Tony Ferguson. Chimaev fought Holland. Li Jingliang and Daniel Rodriguez agreed to go head-to-head. While UFC 279 did produce some amazing fights, many fans still had their suspicions that the promotion had planned all of this in advance. Drama for promo? Sounds legit, doesn't it? The craziness of the event has gone down in history as one of the most controversial moments ever seen in UFC history. But this next one is unforgettable. TJ Dillashaw fought Aljamain Sterling at UFC 280 with an injured shoulder. In the UFC, fighters are no strangers to dealing with injuries before a big fight. Many have gone in despite bumps and bruises, but it's rare for a fighter to enter the octagon so severely injured that they probably shouldn't have competed at all. So I really didn't see this one coming, but it's exactly what TJ Dillashaw did when he faced Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight title in October. The former title holder had never lost the gold in the octagon prior to his positive drug test, and he desperately wanted to reclaim it. Sterling was just as determined to take it from him, so the fight quickly became one of 2022's most highly anticipated. Unfortunately for Dillashaw, Sterling proved too much for him and finished the fight via TKO in the second round. But what made this truly bizarre was the fact that Dillashaw had actually entered with a serious shoulder injury. According to reports, he wasn't able to properly prepare for the fight, and it ruined his performance, leaving him almost defenseless. Afterward, Dillashaw immediately went to surgery, leaving everyone wondering why he'd even gone through with it in the first place. Even Dana White was shocked. saying that he had no idea Dillashaw had been injured. It's even crazier that UFC's medical team missed this injury too. But sometimes it's easy to lose track of things in the game, just like Charles Oliveira's weigh-in issues at UFC 274. The weigh-ins for the upcoming UFC 274 event in May were set to be one of the biggest fights of the year. Charles Oliveira was defending his lightweight title against Justin Gaethje, and all eyes were on them. But then the unexpected happened. Oliveira failed to hit the 155-pound lightweight limit and managed 155.5 instead, so he was stripped of his title. And only Gaethje would be eligible for gold at the event. It soon became clear that the practice scale used by fighters prior to their weigh-ins had encountered some calibration issues, and this was causing many problems. Around 19 and 28 fighters competing on the card came in half a pound heavier than the division's championship limit. At featherweight, Norma Dumo also missed weight outright. In other words, it wasn't just Oliveira's problem. DuBronx put on an impressive performance to defeat Gaethje in the first round via a chokeout, but it still couldn't give him back his title. It wasn't just a controversial, but a very frustrating moment for him, since he'd never failed to hit the 155-pound mark before. This one, however, was a UFC problem. There have even been times where the fighters are just too problematic for UFC as a whole. Like when James Krause was banned from the UFC after a betting scandal. Over the years, the UFC and gambling have been linked to each other, with experts making predictions ahead of fights and odds being broadcast before the match. It's no surprise that the two have gone hand in hand. But in 2022, the relationship was tested when featherweights Derek Minner and Shah Yalan fought in a highly controversial match. Minner appeared to injure his knee early on in the fight, allowing Yalan to take control and eventually stop him after a series of elbow strikes. But hours before the fight, it was revealed that there'd been some suspicious betting activity regarding Minner, with bets on Yalan pouring in. This prompted the Nevada State Athletic Commission to start an investigation, and eventually led to the former lightweight competitor, James Krause, being suspended from his coaching license. Krause retired from action in 2020 to focus on his coaching career, with Minner being one of his pupils. Apparently, he'd leaked information about the knee injury Minner suffered before the fight, so everyone started placing their bets on Shah Yalan. Despite being released from his contract, media outlets blamed the UFC for not having stricter policies in place regarding gambling amongst its athletes. Speaking of things to control, Conor McGregor's weight gain. His return to the UFC in 2022 wasn't meant to be, but his name definitely stayed prominent in the news. The Notorious got a serious leg injury in 2021, which left him on the sidelines. So he kept fans updated with pictures of his rehab through social media posts. But when McGregor posted photos showing a huge amount of muscle gain, people started speculating that he might have used banned substances to help his recovery. The situation was made more confusing when it was revealed McGregor had withdrawn from USADA testing pool, which is usually a practice reserved for retirement announcements. And what did Dana White have to say? He said that McGregor would need to undergo 6 months worth of testing before any chance of a return. The Irishman then took to social media and suggested that everything regarding his injury had been disclosed to USADA and the UFC, but he didn't confirm nor deny using PEDs. Well, those were some of the biggest controversies in UFC history. See you in the next video.